So let's turn the page here. Last national televised game we saw was the 49ers without Christian McCaffrey, putting the bang thing on the Jets. Is McCaffrey going to sit out another week, do you think?
He certainly is talking, Rich, like a guy who, if it were up to him, would be on the field. I think it's fair to say that if Christian McCaffrey gets cut loose or whenever they put him on the field, he's not going to be the load carrying 25 touch guy that he might normally be. And that was evidenced by his backup, who initially stepped into a little something when he said he'd been told on Friday that he was going to
Yes.
start. Kyle Shanahan cleaned that up by saying, no, I told him he was going to play a lot. In other words, they know that Christian McCaffrey is managing both a calf injury and Achilles tendonitis. That's not something that's just going to disappear. It's not like it's an MCL sprain 3 weeks and brace it up and he'll be back out there. It's something that he's going to have to manage. If you look at the schedule, they're on the road the next 2 weeks, both games on turf in Minnesota and then against the Rams at SoFi Stadium. I know McCaffrey kind of pushed back against that, saying it's not like I can run on grass and not on turf. If I can go, I can go. He's putting himself and he's approaching the week as if he's going to play, but it's a long season. They won last week without him. I would anticipate that they take the same cautious approach. And if he's turned loose here, Rich, to play on Sunday, I would imagine that it's in a timeshare in which he's not getting the heaviest workload.
So that'll be something to keep an eye on early window. So, you and I at I guess 11:30 in the morning Eastern time on NFL Game Day morning, we'll be keeping an eye on that active inactive report coming out of Minnesota. Who's going to be the Steelers starter at quarterback this week in Denver, Tom?
It's interesting here, Rich, because Mike Tomlin flat out said it on Tuesday. Russ is hurt. He's not available to us. So we are preparing Justin Fields to be the starter. Usually, when you follow just kind of the history of Tomlin speak, that's a pretty good indication that the guy who's been healthy through the week is going to get the start. You remember, we kind of went through this last year with Kenny Pickett, where one of the Tomlinisms is always the participation will be our guide. Well, Russell Wilson still hasn't gone through a full practice since he re-aggravated that calf injury during the early stages of last week. Now, I also can tell you, they legitimately took it up to game day last Sunday. And sometimes teams say game time decision, and really they've made that decision Friday or Saturday. Last week, Russ went through a pregame workout. He told them, I can do this. I can go out there and play. But looking at a Russell Wilson who's not 100% with an injury that easily could be aggravated and get a lot worse relative to Justin Fields, who now we've seen play in this new offense. He protected the football. He didn't have any of those hellacious Justin Fields razzle-dazzle run around the field types of plays, but he was the main source of their run game against Atlanta. He showed that he can play mistake-free football, and that's the way that they're built, which is run the football, play really good defense, and make enough plays in the passing game. All of which is to say, I don't know that Justin Fields is going to take over the job. Last year, Kenny Pickett never was restored, and Mason Rudolph ended up starting a playoff game. But at minimum here, again, we'll see what the participation report says today, but the fact that Russ hasn't gone through a full practice would indicate to me that we are not going to get the revenge game that we were all circling on the calendar in week 2 against the Broncos. It more than likely will be Justin Fields, who, Rich, let's remember, a little bit of a revenge game, right? They took Patrick Surtain over Justin Fields. A lot of people were saying you should take Fields. Broncos just extended Patrick Surtain. Justin Fields now going back in there on his second NFL team.
I like you trying to stir something up to put a little bit of
we can always find
juice
something
on it. No, I'm sure Justin Fields is thinking about that. But, and Surtain's no slouch. But for Russ, definitely circled this thing. I mean, there's no question he wants to play in it. So what happened? Like, he pushed a sled in training camp, and this is still lingering? Is that what this is from, Tom?
It was the day that players reported, or the day after, whatever the conditioning test was. They have a new strength coach who, by and large, by the way, has been great for them. But
Sure.
in this case, part of the new conditioning test they did was have the players push a blocking sled, which is normally not something that the quarterback is going to do. Well, Russ, who has been doing everything the same way as everybody else, I know a lot's been talked about
Yes.
how things were set up in Seattle, how things were set up in Denver. He has approached this as, hey, I'm doing everything that everybody else is doing. In hindsight, maybe don't have the 34-year-old quarterback pushing a blocking sled in the conditioning drill there. But yeah, he tweaked the calf. it didn't feel right. He didn't take full reps for a couple of weeks there and then kind of reintegrated. And then last week, I want to say it was on Wednesday, maybe it was Thursday, but early on in the week, he started to feel a little something in the calf again. He didn't think it was a big deal, but whenever you have a calf injury that then you're a month or so, 6 weeks removed from, then you say, hey, it's feeling tight. That's a red flag, particularly to a team that's as medically conservative as the Steelers are. And so they're continuing to bring him back. They don't want this to be something that lingers throughout the entire season. And there have been plenty of quarterbacks who have tried to play through calf injuries. Aaron Rodgers, right at the top of the list, he played through one back in 2014, I believe it was. And by the time they got to the NFC Championship game, he couldn't even stand up on his tiptoes. That's how bad the calf had gotten. His calf still looks kind of mutilated to this day. That's not to say that Russell Wilson, it's nothing that significant. It doesn't sound like they've considered putting him on injured reserve to this point. But given the fact that you're 1-0, you're going into Denver, do you really want to take any type of a chance here, especially because Justin Fields gave you what you needed last week?
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.